Monitoring water quality, invasive species management, algae and plant management, fisheries management, and watershed BMPs. These are just a few of the things that all go into the field of lake management. The field of lake management can be defined as the study of the environmental characteristics, impairments, and uses of a lake or reservoir in order to make and provide management decisions that both benefit the environment as well as the stakeholders of the lake. Now, lake managers are true natural resource professionals that possess a varied skill set and variety of techniques that allow them to identify and remediate lake and reservoir problems. The management needs of lakes vary greatly from lake to lake, and as such, so do the management techniques that are employed on them. However, there is typically one common element shared amongst all lakes and reservoir management: the need to work directly with the lake's stakeholders, stakeholders being those who live on or are invested in the lake in some way. Receiving input from stakeholders provides the framework for a management plan, as it identifies the plan's goals and the perceived issues with the lake. However, there is much more information needed to form a management plan. Broadly speaking, a lake management plan can be put into a few general steps. The first being communicating with stakeholders to identify what issues they perceive to be most important on the lake. The second being sampling to identify those problems and provide new information about the characteristics of the lake. The third being the formation of an interim management plan and then provide that plan to the stakeholders to receive feedback. 4, the completion and possibly implementation of a comprehensive lake management plan. Now let's break down a few of these steps. Now, first and most importantly, communication is key. No lake management plan will be successful without the feedback and the cooperation of the stakeholders. Most private lakes luckily have some form of NGO in the form of a stewardship committee, which eases the process along. If the lake is public or has no committee formed on it, it would most likely be best to work with your state or federal natural resource departments, as well as the residents directly to form a management plan. Now on to the second step. Once stakeholder management concerns are identified, this is where the fun begins, and by that I am referring to sampling. Depending on the issues faced by the lake, the sampling techniques employed will vary. For example, if a stakeholder's main concern is nuisance aquatic plants, then a perch and plant survey to identify nuisance species and target areas would most likely be appropriate. Another example would be taking water and sediment samples for nutrient analyses for a eutrophic lake that has HABs. Third, once sampling is done and the problems are identified, it is best to put together an interim management plan to give to the stakeholders. This interim management plan will be the foundation for the overall lake management plan. Once stakeholders are presented with this newly gathered information, it allows them to decide what they think is the best course of action for their lake, and they will provide feedback to the lake manager on their thoughts. Now lastly, with all the information that has been gathered and the feedback received from the stakeholders, comes the determination of the best course of action to rectify the issues faced by the lake, which, like the sampling methods, varies depending on many factors. These can range from finances of the stewardship committee, infrastructure of the lake, such as dams, the recreational and utility uses of the lake, such as do people boat, swim in the lake? Is the lake used for drinking water? And lastly, are there any state or federal regulations that require permits needed for the management plan? So let's walk through a hypothetical lake management plan example. This is Sunny Lake. Sunny Lake Stewardship Committee has decided to contact a lake management firm to provide them with the management plan for Sunny Lake. The first thing you should do as a lake manager is survey the residents of the lake to find out what issues they care about the most. Next is to sample the lake to identify the problems and prioritize the issues. Then it's time to present this information of what you learned to the stakeholders so they know what is really going on in their lake. Lastly, you compile all you learned into a formal management plan. And what steps residents can take to rectify any issues that were found in the lake. And there you have it, a successful lake management plan. A lake management plan is an invaluable resource to lake stakeholders that is not only a great benefit to them, but also to the environment for years to come.